Welcome to Adventures in Surgical Weight Loss with Dr. R. I'm Dr. Richard Rasmussen. I'm a bariatric surgeon and excited to bring you another story from a surgical weight loss patient. My goal is to give patients a place where they can share their amazing stories. I get to hear these stories all the time. I hope through this process to get rid of some of the bad information that exists about surgical weight loss. Today we get to learn from Beau Barney. Beau is just over a year out from a gastric bypass. He's lost over 250 pounds and has really seen a huge change in his life. He also had a pretty scary experience right after surgery, and we talk about that. So I really think you'll enjoy getting to know Beau. Today I have the opportunity to sit down with Beau Barney. Welcome, Beau.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Beau and I have been working on this for a little while, trying to get together, and it's finally happened. And so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, me too. Been looking forward to it.
Well, Beau, why don't you go ahead and tell us your story?
Well, I used to just work a lot and 24 hours a day, and I started eating bad, and not taking care of myself anymore. And didn't realize the weight I was putting on, but I packed on plenty. I was 560 at my largest. And, I got a bunch of grandkids and started, looking at my health, which was extremely bad. I had diabetes, I had blood pressure, I had blood clots, I had, you name it, I had it. It was on 12 different medications. So I decided to contact you. I had a niece that worked at your hospital that referred me to you, and well, I'm glad she did. It has been a wonderful experience. Before I met you, I started exercising and trying to walk, get up and moving where I could walk. I don't know, before I met you, I think I was walking 20 feet and having to sit down and breathe. I just got tired of all that and had so much to live for. I just started making changes. Before I met you, like I said, I was 560 and I dropped down to, I think, 497 or so when I came in and met Sophia for the first time. And
That's awesome. I'm just going to ask you a question here. What was life? I mean, you mentioned kind of the medical problem, but what was life like at 560 pounds?
It wasn't life. There was no living. I didn't go anywhere. I hated leaving the house. The depression, anxiety, you name it. That's negative. It was there. I wouldn't go see my family. It was terrible. Trying to, be mobile, get up and move around. I was on oxygen 24/7, sleep apnea. There was no life, other than taking up space and other people's oxygen. It won't sound negative, but it was awful. It was painful. My back, my knees, every joint in my body just ached. It was no fun. I was mean. I was ornery. I had absolutely zero ambition to do anything at all. Other than turn on the TV and watch TV. Then I started getting other things started coming in. I started getting gout really bad, just out of the clear blue, and my kidneys failed, and just on and on and on and on, problem after problem. But what taking a turn for the better. That's for sure.
Love that. You mentioned family being key in making that decision. I mean, tell us what were your hopes and aspirations? Why did you make a decision to change things?
My family, I was very active, when I was young. My family's very active. We camp, we fish, we do all kinds of outdoors activities. I was very athletic. My granddaughter, to the time she was born, she 18 now, almost, but she's like my shadow. We hike together, we fish together, ice fish, you name it. She's there. And I got to where, I honestly couldn't walk, to take her out anywhere. So we'd go out and we'd try and do a hunt and we'd have to drive around in the truck. It was just not fun. And I'm still young. I had so much to live for and so much time to spend with them. I wanted to maximize that, get as much back as I could. And, just my family just tell me how worried they are about me. And, grandkids would come see me and it was no fun for them. Come sit and, look at grandpa sitting there, all big and terrible and ornery looking. And, but, you realize how much people love you and how important you are. So big deal.
Yeah. And that's awesome. So let's, why don't we fast forward now you're, remind me, a year or 2 years?
February 28th was 1 year. So I'm just
past a year. So now a year later, give us some of the statistics, how much weight you lost, and then maybe how has your life changed in that year?
I'm down from, I think it was the day of surgery. Well, from the day I met you, I believe 497. And as of this morning, I'm 306. So just since I seen you the other day, I've lost 6 or so pounds.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's, from the 560 to now, it's 240 pounds, 60-ish pounds, somewhere in there.
250, 260.
Yeah. So, that's 3 or 4 people, I tell people, I said, you figure the weight of a 16-pound bowling ball and figure how many of those I was carrying on my body at one. It was
my goodness,
astronomical. And losing all that, my joints feel better. I walk now. I've told you I'm up to, hiking 4 miles a day. It's mountainous. It's not just flat ground. I'm jogging, working out. Just my life is so much better. I can breathe. I no longer have diabetes. I no longer have, it's in check anyway. My last A1C was at 5.2.
Nice.
Blood pressure's gone, the high blood pressure. I'm not on oxygen no more. My kidneys have bounced back. They're 100%. They're doing great. I could go on and on and on and on. It's just how good I feel, just those dietary changes and sticking to it, and I got apps on my phone. When I go in the store, the Costco or whatever, I have apps on my phone that I'll point at the barcode and it'll tell me if it's approved or not approved. I cut out every bit of seed oils. I don't do any seed oils. It's all, tallow or, good oils. My diet's just, it's spot on. It's healthy. Even my wife, she's lost 70 pounds just doing this with me. She's not really a big gal. She was just getting a little, little chunky. But
that's awesome. That, that is, kind of some collateral effect. I don't want to say collateral damage because it's not damage. It's good effect, but it's some collateral effect of, having such a big change in the household and other people adopting healthy eating and they get those health benefits as well.
Yeah. She's been my savior. She makes sure I stay on it and, I'm retired and she still works. So I do all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the, I'm Mr. Mom around the house. And, so when I cook just a small, tiny amount, a little piece of chicken. That's what she gets. That's what I get, or just, a little bit of veggies, and she's changed her appetite to mine. And, we haven't had anything with like sugar or soda pops in 2 or 3 years. So, just cutting certain things out of your diet. It's amazing how well you'll start to feel just on that alone.
So true.
Yeah. Our joints, obviously from the weight loss for me, but I know that cutting out the, sunflower oils and all that out of my diet. I know that's helped with all the inflammation in my joints and everything. And, I've taken a whole new, healthier approach to life, and I'm loving it.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Um, so what, obviously made a lot of changes. You just kind of delineated those for us. What would you say has been the hardest part about making those changes?
Uh, it's hard at times when you go someplace and they got something there that you really like, and you'd really like to have it, and you'd really like to have a lot of it, but you can't. You gotta, you gotta have your willpower. You gotta be strong minded. It's a mind game. It's a definite mindset. And, the more you do it, the more you live it, the more you stay true to it, the easier it becomes, it becomes just habit. I'll go to the grocery store now and walk through. I won't go down the chip aisle. I don't go down any of those aisles. It's purposeful not to go down those aisles. And now it's just, no, there don't be nothing down there, So we don't go there. But it was hard to get off soda. It's one of those things. It's hard to, I loved Coca-Cola. It was my favorite. And Fresca was another good favorite of mine. But, now it's just sugar-free Powerade and, just water.
Mhm.
Basically, I don't, nothing. And, the first part of it was the hardest, just getting in that routine and staying there. And, that self-discipline and accountability. You got to have that accountability. Know when you messed up. Oh, well, I shouldn't have ate that. But, all those things, they get easier, they do.
I love those comments. Consistency is key, and it's very helpful. Um, and also, your comment, you messed up. I mean, I'll mess up from time to time, right? And that's the beauty is you recognize it and it's okay. I'm going to do better this time. And it's making those changes and just being engaged and consistent with what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. I've been eating and not paid attention. I ate a little bit more than I should a few times. And I paid for, I was like, oh, you learn real quick not to do it, and, having a good, cast around you, a good people backing
Support
you up.
crew.
Yeah. My children, my grandkids, my wife, they're all, you know, I'll, I'll talk to them kids. Well, how much weight you lost? And I'll tell them, they just, they celebrate it, It's, oh, wow, that's crazy. My daughter said, well, you've lost two. My one grandson, she goes, you've lost two of Isaac's, two, 12-year-old, yeah, yeah. And so having that good support system is really important. It really helps a lot, keeps you,
That's great.
keeps you going, keeps you in check. And we'll go to the house for dinner and they make sure they have a plate there for me because I only use a small plate. I won't get a big plate. I won't get a big bowl. Just small. It doesn't fit on that plate. I don't need it. Just with that.
That's awesome. That's another great tool for long-term success is managing your environment and, using smaller plates, smaller bowls, great way to help, perpetuate your success.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely is. And, meal prep, plan your meals out. So you know what you're going to cook, how much you're going to cook, don't throw in a, gallon stovetop pan of soup, and get a big bowl because you'll overdo it. You gotta stay on yourself. You gotta keep disciplining yourself. That's for sure. But I keep saying it does get easier. It becomes a lifestyle. That's really what it is.
That's fantastic. Yeah. All right. So you mentioned that family was key. You finally decided, okay, this is something I need to do. You met with Sophia, one of our nurse practitioners. You kind of helped start the process. many know that, involved in that is seeing a dietitian, a psychologist, getting an endoscopy, doing some blood work, all those kinds of things. So there's a process in getting one prepared. Any key or memorable parts moving through that process, getting up to surgery day?
Um, when you start going through those and you start your diets and everything, you can't let yourself get discouraged, you know, because if you do, you're just, you're wasting time. You're
Hmm.
wasting your own time. You're wasting your time. So if anybody's time, you gotta kick yourself in the butt and stay on that diet. Um, Go to all your classes, meet all the people you're supposed to meet, be honest and upfront with them. Don't try and bull crap them because they know. No, they
Definitely no.
know.
And of course, the purpose of it is to help you, right? It's to help you through
Yeah,
this process. And
yeah, yeah. And the whole staff, your whole staff, Sophia and everybody is so amazing when you go in there, sit down, talk to her. She always makes you feel, every time I've been in there and talked to her, she's made me feel like I am, just accomplishing above and beyond, and you do when you come in and see me, and it's uplifting. It makes you feel like a superstar. Just, it keeps you going. But, those, I wouldn't change any of it. Not one bit of it. I've enjoyed this whole entire process. You know, One of those things, we'll talk about in a bit, but,
there was one aspect of it that was a
there was
little
once
tricky.
one little thing one day, but, for the most part, I love it. I'm so happy with everything.
Oh,
It's
that's
couldn't
fantastic.
ask for anything better.
Yeah. Well, you brought us up to day of surgery. You talked about the liquid diet. Just for those who may not know, we put patients on a low calorie liquid diet to help shrink that liver. We got to get that liver up out of the way so we can have access to the stomach and do the operation. Um, and I guess I don't think we've said yet on this episode, but you had a gastric bypass.
Yep.
So one of the possible surgical options. And so, anything memorable about a day of surgery, waking up after surgery, that first night in the hospital? Any significant thoughts from that?
Um, just how easy it was. It was just smooth. I was expecting to wake up being just, agony, because other surgeries I've had in my life, knee surgeries and everything. But I mean, I woke up and, I really felt good through the
Awesome.
whole thing. And then I think, can't remember if I stayed one night or 2 nights in there. I
One
think
night.
one night. Yeah. And,
Yep.
you guys coming in and talking and going over everything. And it was, it was really simple. It really was compared to what I was preparing myself for. I guess expect the worst or expect the best when I went, however that goes. But, it, um, it was really easy. My mobility after, I didn't have any problems getting around um, the diet. I mean, that was hard. I mean,
Uh-huh.
well, not really hard. It was incredibly unbelievable to where I could drink a thimble full of water and just like, oh man, that was a loss, or tiny swallows and trying to take a sip every like, couple minutes, trying to take a little tiny sip of water to keep myself hydrated. And, just, and then eating. And my wife would come home from work, 2 weeks later. So what'd you eat today? Tell me what you ate. And I tell her, she goes, that's all? You got to eat more. And I said, I can't. I can't. There's no way. And, just, um, yeah, that was probably one of the biggest things that blew me away was how full you are after a bite of food.
Hmm.
It was just incredible. It really was. But, I don't know, the whole thing was just I mean, I just incredible experience. I'm so used I don't know how to explain that.
Well, that's probably a great segue to you got home. You've been home for 3 days, was it?
28, 2 days.
2 days. All right. So you spent the night in the hospital, been home for 2 days, and then tell us what happened.
Well, I didn't listen. I went to the restroom and I pushed a little too hard and felt a pain underneath my left rib. I was like, wow. And every time I try and breathe in, it just hurt, and I'm the kind of guy, I just shake it off, and I was walking around and hurt, told my wife, she goes, let's go to the hospital now. And I'm like, no, I'll be okay. I'll go lay down for me. She goes, no, now. And from our house in Nephi to the hospital, it's 4 minutes. By the time we got there, I couldn't get out of the car. I was in so much pain. I was gray. I was sweaty. They had to bring a wheelchair out to get me. And I was in pretty bad shape pretty quickly.
Do
Go
you
ahead.
remember what happened once they got you into the ER?
Yeah. They got me in there and they started working on me. They asked me what was going on. I told them, the surgery I just had. And they said, I think I might hurt myself. And they said, yeah, I think you did. And, they took me in, gave me an MRI and, they was running a bunch of tests and Dr. Jones over here, he was coming in and out and a nurse kept walking by, practitioner. She goes, you okay? You still with us? You with us? Rubbing on my chest and everything. And boy, I felt like I was all there, but I was in a lot worse situation than I even imagined. And after a while, I was there for quite a while and they had IVs in each arm and they were basically squeezing the blood to put back in me. I was bleeding so bad. And they ended up cutting me right here and putting in a main or central, I guess they call it.
Yep,
IV
central
here.
line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with blood. And like you said, that's probably one of the things that saved my life was that one. And they just put in unit after unit after unit, just kept on and kept on. And it was extremely windy that day. And they were going to life flight me, but they couldn't. So they ended up ambulancing me over to Provo. But before that, they were sitting there. And right before Dr. Jones put that in me, he started yelling at people. And he says, because they were like dilly-dallying. And he looked at me and goes, I'm sorry. And he put his hand on my chest. He goes, I'm sorry. He goes, but son, you're not doing very well. And I was like, oh, man.
Yeah.
And they got me an ambulance and took off. And my wife was going out, or she went home real quick to turn everything off and come back. And I'd already left. And she looked at him and she said, thank you so much for your help. And he looked at her with just a blank look and said, I'm so sorry. So, she didn't think I was going to make it. I didn't think.
Yeah.
And that ride over from Nephi to Provo, well, that was the most painful ride I've ever had in my life because I was welling up so bad. And they got me to Provo to the hospital there and they started working on me again, got me somewhat stable. And I can't remember if you came in to talk to me there or if it was just in the operating room, but they worked on me for a while. When we got there, they called ahead. They were supposed to be ready for me and they weren't. So those emergency guys, the ambulance guys, boy, they raised Cain with them. You should have been ready. They were screaming out, and this guy's, And anyway, they got me into the ER finally, and it was, I remember talking to you for a brief second there, and you telling me what you might have to do, cut me in, from the bow to sternum, and the anesthesiologist, he went to lay me back. He goes, we're putting you out now. I was like, okay. You went to lay me back. No, I just trying to tell him I can't breathe. I was so, filled up at that point. And, well, it was scary. I remember they wheeling me out of there to the ER and I just looked at my wife and winked at her, get her away because I didn't think I was coming at that point.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It was scary.
Terrifying.
Yeah. And when I woke up the next day, I still had the thing down my throat and everything. And boy, I was happy. And then, you came in about an hour later, we talked and you told me how lucky I was. And I'm still, every time I see it, so grateful, you know, it's, so grateful for what you did and be as skilled as you are. You know what I mean? I don't remember how much blood I lost or, I think it was 20 something units. I don't know. It was a lot, but, uh, I wouldn't
Yeah.
want that to scare anybody because it, I wouldn't change any. I mean, I'd change that, of course. As far as the procedure goes and everything, it is, you know, it's easy as long as you don't, as long as you listen to your doctor and go to the restroom, do what you're not supposed to do. It's piece of cake.
But let me now, let me fill in some of the cracks and crevices and maybe round out this picture a little bit more. So one of the things that was unique in your situation is you mentioned earlier, you have a history of blood clots. And so you're on a blood thinner, Eliquis.
Right. I forgot that.
And so, we of course put you back on that as you went home, trying to prevent blood clots. And that's, it's very good at preventing blood clots, but it also puts people at higher risk for bleeding. And so there's this fine line that we always walk when we're using those blood thinners. Now, yes, we don't want you to do anything real strenuous. Most of the time we're not anticipating what happened to you. I mean, that is a rare situation that you were just straining to go to the bathroom and had that pop. But what obviously happened is something popped open and started bleeding, right? And as I mentioned to you before, yes, I absolutely credit the team at it was Nephi Hospital, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Central Valley. Yeah.
Getting you in, getting that line in, starting the blood. The CAT scan showed, of course, you had a bunch of fluid in your belly, consistent with blood. And so that's what, and that with your low blood pressure, they knew that's what was going on. And so they started giving you blood. And yeah, that was absolutely critical. And then, having to drive rather than fly. And, it's obviously a little bit longer time, but there, the EMS support, all of that. And, we knew you were coming. They'd made the calls ahead. We had the OR ready, things ready to go. So once you got there and we actually got you into an ER bay, as you mentioned, anesthesia put you to sleep and we wheeled you up to the operating room, continuing to push the blood. So I just looking here at some of my notes, I estimated that you lost 7 liters of blood. So the normal body carries about 5 liters. Now you're a big guy, so you might be a little bit higher, but basically you lost your whole blood volume.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much they gave you in Nephi or in route, but we ended up giving you 1 unit of whole blood, 10 units of packed red blood cells, 2 units of FFP, and a medication called TXA to try to help stop bleeding. And that was all kind of during that resuscitation process. In surgery, of course, we did your original operation robotically. So we had, 6 small incisions. My hope was, can I go in and find this and control it laparoscopically or robotically with small incisions? So as you had indicated, I told you that was how I was going to start, but we might have to open you. And so we got you to sleep, prepped and draped all of that, put those trocars in, and of course, just blood everywhere. Spent maybe just a couple minutes just kind of suctioning out blood, seeing, can we see where we can see what's bleeding, and just couldn't safely. I made the decision at that point, if we mess around here too long, we're gonna get behind the 8-ball, meaning lose more blood than we can take care of. And so we, took those, what they're called trocars, out and just made that big midline incision. And then when patients come in, like in a traumatic situation, they've been in a car accident or something, and have a bunch of internal bleeding, what we'll do is we open the abdomen and then we'll put a bunch of packs in. They're called packs. They're laparotomy pads. Just think of like a towel, basically. So we put a bunch of towels in there just to put pressure on everything, soak up the blood, and then let us systematically go through and try to find where the bleeding is. One of the things that was very interesting on you is we never really found, this was the artery that was bleeding. Right. We did find a bunch of fresh clot along the staple lines of your stomach. So probably from there, but being on that Eliquis just, didn't allow you to clot. Somebody else, little vessel breaks loose, it'll bleed some, but then it's going to clot off. But with that blood thinner, it just couldn't. So we cauterized those. We oversewed them. We spent a long time just watching and looking and making sure that was controlled, and then washed everything out and sewed it back up. So it was definitely a crazy, crazy time. And I just credit so many people involved in something like that. Just everybody was on their game, and obviously very happy that you and I are talking today, because that could have gone the other way. But
took the whole village.
Whole village, absolutely. And quite honestly, in our modern medicine, our systems are set up to take care of that kind of stuff. I mean, it doesn't come in that often, but when it does, that's what we all train for. And I think you were the recipient and witness to how that system can work.
Yeah, absolutely. I do remember in the emergency room or the operating room when you came in and you kind of quickly went over with me what was going to happen and what might, how you might have to open me out and this and that. I can remember how calm you were. And I was like, how can this guy be so calm? But, you already had the game plan. You knew exactly what was good, and that was impressive. And it was comforting, because where my mind was at that point in time, it was very comforting, and the next day when I woke up and you came in and, we visited and, I felt so good after that visit, that's for sure. And you telling me, you got one strong will to live, buddy.
That is true.
But I guess so. But, just the professionalism and the skill of everybody involved, like you were saying, was phenomenal. Nobody was, the people that were worried didn't show in other than, Dr. Jones, because, he wanted people to get the lead out. Yeah. And he was just doing it, because of the severity of it and, which was good. But, and I actually went, me and you talked and I told you that I was going to go over to him too after, I thanked you for everything you did. And you said, I highly suggest you do. And I did, and it was really neat talking to him. And I was like, do you remember me? And he goes, and I said, and I told him, when and what happened. And he goes, oh, wow. He goes, I never thought I'd be talking, and we had a really long, good conversation. And his head nurse, that was there, it was all three of us. We had a good long visit and, got emotional and it was pretty neat. Really neat.
That's awesome. But I'm sure as soon as you started mentioning detail, I'm sure that came back to him real quick.
Real quick. He goes, oh, yeah, so I do remember. It took me a month or two to get in there to see him, because I was healing out and trying to get mobile. But once I did, I made it a point. And I actually went in there 2 other times, but he wasn't on duty. He was there. But finally met up with him and, we had a good visit. And, it was inspiring. It was pretty neat, and that's, and after everything we just talked about, that's one of the number one reasons I will not give up on this process is because, I put myself through too much. My wife, my kids, you, Dr. Jones, everybody involved went through too much to get me to where I'm at today, with all of that said. And, I'm not going to let myself down. I'm not going to let anybody down. I'm going to see this thing through and keep getting healthy. And, it's amazing how well I feel compared to where I was at a year ago. I'm on the go constantly and it's nice, being outside again, enjoying life, nature. It's, if anybody's out there is thinking about it and watching these, do it. Just stop thinking about it, make an appointment, start the process because you'll thank yourself, your family's going to thank you. I can't say it enough. It's the best gift you'll ever give yourself. You really.
I love it. Thank you so much. thank you for taking the time, for opening your heart, sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. All of you. All of you. So much.
Thanks again to Beau Barney for sharing his story. Uh, I love, of course, all that he's achieved, well over 250 pounds of weight lost. And, he's just his activity, being more active, being more present with his family, so many wonderful victories. And then what a crazy story. His, really almost dying. I mean, being at the point where, could have died, and being able to make it through all of that, and just the resolve he has. It's what a great story, and really grateful to him for sharing it with us. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. It will help us reach more people with these amazing stories. I also have a YouTube channel where you can see this video, as well as several other videos about surgical weight loss, general surgery, and robotic surgery. Join us next time for another amazing story.